Welcome back to another podcast episode, everyone. I am joined by my co-host, Dean.
That is me.
That is you. And Flex Success Coach, Nick.
That is me.
Welcome back, Nick.
Thanks for having me back.
The first time you came on our podcast, this is time number 2, we spoke about vegan diets, why or why not to go vegan, or a plant-based diet. Actually, we decided it should be termed, not going vegan. And this time we just wanted to expand on the practicalities of that, I believe.
Yeah.
But just to quickly give you guys a refresher of who Nick is, if you didn't listen to podcast number 1. Nick, do you want to give us a quick wrap up of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'll make it even quicker than last time.
Okay.
I'm a Flex Success coach. I'm a semi-pro rugby player. I am a new qualified nutritionist. And that's about it. That's as far as it needs to go. I'm studying performance nutrition. That's pretty much all that's relevant to the conversation. Sweet. I'm also a bit of a dickhead and a massive nerd, but
you can be
listeners either don't care. Yeah.
I think being a little bit of a nerd is important, and I think also being an Australian coach, despite living in Berlin,
that's pretty cool.
That you need to have a little bit of dickheadness to you as well.
Yeah, definitely. Otherwise, everyone just shouts and waves their hands at you because you don't speak the same language. Even though everyone in Berlin does speak English, so whatever.
They do. There you go. Before we get into the, I don't want to say meat and veg of the vegan podcast, I'd love for you to tell us a fun fact about you because you gave us some relevant points, but give us an irrelevant point.
My funnest fact, the one I always pull out in these situations, is that I was once on Australian Idol.
Yes. I think we tried to search for that, didn't we?
Yeah, we searched high and low to try and see if we could get Nick's sweet baritones out to the public again, but he told us we would never find him. It's true.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you were bearded back then too, so even more.
Yeah, even if you could find me, good luck recognizing me.
Did you have hair on your head?
Yeah, it was the other way back then.
It's migrated south.
Yeah.
All right.
It's always winter in Berlin.
To get to the practicalities of vegan diets, tell us, Master, where do you think we should start?
Yeah, what do people fuck up?
People fuck up energy intake and protein intake. They're the two big areas. People know not to eat, meat and dairy, but that's about all they know. So people just look at, the ingredients label on packets, and that's probably, the first place they're going wrong. If it has a packet, and you're looking for something that's vegan, then there's a fair chance that it's super highly processed, probably highly palatable, apart from things that need preservation like tofu or whatever. But, most of the snacky foods that come in a packet that are vegan friendly are enhanced in a way that makes it taste better because, the original version, whether it tastes better or not, is what everyone's comparing it to. So, let's use a vegan brownie, for example. Everyone expects it to taste like a normal brownie and have the same texture as a normal brownie. So then the new food that's brought out that is vegan friendly is made to feel and taste like a normal brownie, and therefore it goes through more processing to have that happen. So people search for that. And I said energy, I don't just mean too little energy. Some people do go down that route. If they go purely whole food, basically only eating something that was grown and, I don't know, had a shadow or whatever qualifies their weird version of whatever they're doing. There's also over consumption of calories. So where people do aim for those more palatable foods because maybe they came from a highly processed diet before and then they went vegan for ethical reasons, and then straight away they're looking for those highly processed versions, and because they're manufactured the way they are, they do taste good.
Yeah. So for listeners who heard the word highly palatable or palatable, how are we pronouncing that? Is there a consensus there on the pronunciation?
I think
depends on the mood.
Change it. Hey?
All right, depends on the mood of the day.
I say hyper palatable.
Hyper palatable. Okay, whatever it is. Nick mentioned that word, and I'm sure most of us are familiar with it. And anyone who is part of the Flex Success Research Review who has listened or read research review number 7 will know that hyperpalatable foods means a food that has a particular combination of or high in fats and carbohydrates, which has proven to be difficult to resist and difficult to have in moderation, and we're willing to pay more for it. So when food is that delicious, of course, we don't want to stop at just, one square of chocolate. We want to have the whole block.
Yep.
A whole jar of Nutella all over our face.
He would be silly enough to do that. So basically portion control can be an issue with these foods, and so can keeping to a budget.
And that's the other thing too, also within that hyperpalatability would be sodium. And then with Nick talking about this high processed approach to trying to not mimic, but maybe better otherwise normal meat products with a vegan product that's hyper processed, it's obviously then going to generally have also more sodium, more fat, more carbs, and a whole lot of deliciousness. So it seems to me that, I think probably where people make this mistake, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, is that individuals that are going purely for the ethical vegan route, which is awesome, they still require that food education that a lot of people miss out on, even in just general dieting. And because of that, they're just assuming sometimes that also that the vegan diet is healthier because of what they read and what they hear without the background information that's necessary. And then they just pick that food up and just assume it's healthy, and they don't even realize what they're eating.
Yeah, because it's vegan. Like cocaine's vegan. Is that good for you? But that's not to say
cocaine vegan.
Oh, you know what?
Moral question there, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Cocaine is plant-based. How about that?
Well, yeah, it's definitely plant-based. If you're not consuming animal products for vegan reasons, you probably shouldn't be consuming cocaine for, the same ethical reasons. There's probably far more actual people die in the production of cocaine, the production and
that's true.
Selling of cocaine. So.
Not ethically produced. All right.
That means
have one of those little
coffee too, though.
Probably does mean no coffee. Yeah.
There's people don't die for it, I suppose.
But you can get plenty of ethically sourced.
It's true. You can.
Coffee beans.
Yeah. You can probably get ethically sourced cocaine. There's probably some rich people out there who only do cocaine with this little tick of approval on a little baggie.
I only want up to 3 people to have died.
It wouldn't come in a baggie. It would come in a little paper bag of wrapped goodness. It probably comes in a banana leaf or a hemp bag.
But on a serious note, though, I am not vegan, but I do reduce my meat intake and my animal product intake for ethical reasons. And because I'm also concerned with my energy intake, I've found some great meat-free, high-protein products. Nick, I'm not sure if you have them in Berlin, but I'm talking about Quorn, pronounced Quorn.
I joked and said it was Quorn.
It's not Quorn.
Because the problem with corn, I think it's Q with a W, corn.
Okay.
Is that when you say to people, "Have you tried corn?" Assuming that's how it's pronounced, they're like, "The fuck, man!"
Of course, I've tried corn.
Obviously, I've tried corn. Yeah.
Like, cool, dude. Corn's not a protein, right? Like, no, it's corn.
But what else could you suggest for us other than corn products? Which, by the way, comes in a mince pieces, which are like little cubes, fillets, nuggets. Which individual categories have their individual macros. I personally really like the macros of the mince and the pieces.
Yeah. What about say like a non-micro protein source? So what do you kind of tend to go for yourself so people have some application?
So if it's not mycoprotein, which is pretty close to normal animal protein as far as like the makeup and the amino acid profile and the bioavailability, you're then going into either generally more processed, and I guess that's pretty processed anyway, but pretty processed and also pretty high in soy. Like they're kind of your 2 options once you get away from mycoprotein. If you have no issue with soy, like I have no issue with soy, so I just eat shitloads of tofu. Tempeh is a real good one.
We tried that for the first time recently.
Yeah, it was good.
What do you think about it?
So Shannon, we were at the supermarket with Flex Coach Shannon, and she suggested it, and I was like, "Oh, it looks pretty funky. I don't know," but she's like, "That's good." So we bought it. We kept it in the fridge for 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks.
We kept saying we should probably eat this.
Yeah, but we kept putting it off because it looks gross. But anyways, on like one of the last days she was staying with us, she made us a tempeh stir fry, and it was good. It was really nice.
The good thing about tempeh is that it's already covered in mold. So
Oh.
what's it going to do? Get moldier? It's like blue cheese. When does it ever go off? It doesn't, does it?
It has the consistency of like butter beans. It was just like smooth and soft, and it was nice. It was good.
Yeah, it was just it
Tofu-y.
looked to me like a bean meatloaf.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
You know,
That's kind of what it is, except for instead of being held together by like eggs and breadcrumbs, it's held together by mold spores.
Right. See, I didn't know what I ate. Now I don't
Delicious.
mind. Like, I've eaten some weird things in my time, and that's not too bad. But it was actually pretty texturally. It was nice. It was, and it went quite well. So we got tempeh. We've obviously got tofu, soy products,
The microprotein corn products.
What else we got? Anything you do?
Vegan protein powder.
Yeah, vegan protein powder works if you can handle the graininess of it. I know we spoke about it on the last podcast, but yeah, it is very gritty is probably the best way to put it. Like, you can't mix more than one scoop of it per shaker either. Otherwise, you just end up chewing it down. I also regularly eat what's called seitan, which is not, a leader of the underworld, or I don't know, whatever his actual job title is. It is basically the wheat protein that's isolated from the wheat. So they call it, what do they call it? Vital wheat gluten. So it's because the protein in wheat is gluten. They separate. So obviously, if you're celiac, don't try seitan. You'll probably die. It is as concentrated as gluten gets, but it does make a pretty good meat substitute. Like how you make it is going to determine how well it turns out. But then you can get anything from like a fairly spongy texture, like you get in the tofu in Thai dishes, like that real spongy feel, to something that is pretty convincingly meat-like. And once, like, that's a process. So like if you buy that pre-made, it's kind of expensive, probably more expensive than corn anyway. But yeah, if you make it yourself, it's relatively cheap. It just comes in like bags of what looks like flour or cocaine.
The price of guilt-free eating.
So it's something you're adding water to, or baking, or
you essentially add water and then spice like anything else you want to it. But if you did just its basic form, you just add water to it, get it to the consistency you want, and then you boil it, which sounds weird, but it does give it the best like texture. And then once you've made like the, I guess, sheet of it, or however you make it. Like one time I made it into what I thought would look like sausages, but when you boil it, it expands and they just look like big poos, which were wonderful to take. Yeah, wonderful to like break out in the lunchroom at my old job and just be like, yep, I'm just turning into a big old, a big old poo. Yeah, Satan's poo. But yeah, so that's a pretty macro-friendly option. Your issue there is that it's not a complete protein. It's nowhere near a complete protein. And in the science, when they compared wheat protein to whey protein, I think it was like 65 grams to get the same amount of, it wasn't muscle protein synthesis, same amount of leucine as you get from 30 grams of whey.
Well, yeah.
So the actual volume is more, the actual total protein is more, and because the actual total protein is more, you actually ended up with more MPS at the time of testing, obviously, compared to the whey, because by the time they got the leucine up high enough to, hit that leucine threshold, there was all these amino acids ready to just pump into the system, and technically it was higher. How much actual hypertrophy occurred, they didn't actually go in, like they didn't test that far, like they didn't have the study going on for long enough and test these variables.
Yeah, plus you'd be looking at having one monster bolus of protein a day.
Like when I'm using that as a like pretty constant source of protein, I'm also mixing it with other sources of protein to try and get higher better amino acid profile, higher bioavailability. But that does mean that my actual protein number goes super high. So I generally don't eat it when I'm trying to lose weight. But when I'm gaining weight, I don't really care. Like sometimes when I'm gaining weight, I have like 350 grams of protein a day, just because I'm making all these concessions, trying to navigate my way through the vegan protein options. I think Microprotein is probably the best option if you're looking for those low calorie, protein hits. The problem is that a lot of their stuff isn't vegan. So if I was in Australia and I had an awesome range, then I would definitely go that route. But because I'm in Germany and they only have like wieners and bratwurst and stuff, then yeah, I knew wiener would get you.
Even when you said I would go down that route, I was like, route.
Yeah, I think over here the options they have are pretty high calorie, so it's something that I like when I'm really dieting down. I'm going down as lean as possible versions of protein, and sometimes that means that most of my protein will come from protein shakes or stuff like that during the day.
Yeah. So to recap on the last podcast that we did, we covered the question, can you be vegan and be healthy? And for those that haven't watched the first podcast, if for ethical reasons you're thinking about jumping on, the meat-free or plant-based or vegan diet, the answer was yes, you can be. It just takes more thought and more consideration. Mm-hmm. So here you guys are hearing Nick talking about, the considerations of protein sources. And then did we touch on supplementation in the first one? Do you remember?
Very, very slightly. I think you wanted to leave it for this one.
Okay. All right. So this seems like a great segue. Yeah. Talk us through that.
Okay. So supplementation, the first and most obvious is B12.
But why would you supplement? Maybe we'll start there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When I edit, I'll cut that bit out. Yeah. So why would we supplement? Basically, because there are things that you're choosing to leave out of your diet. There's also things that come with the types of food that you're leaving out of your diet that are essential for human health. And normally with any supplement protocol, whether it was for somebody who ate animal products or didn't, the initial recommendation would be try and cover any shortfalls with your diet. But because there are certain things in the vegan diet that you can't get, without supplementation, then it becomes more of a prominent factor in a vegan or plant-based diet compared to, or even vegetarian for most of them, compared to a normal omnivorous diet. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I guess basically it's essential for some of those vitamins to be supplemented, because if you go long enough without, let's use B12 as an example, depending on when you go vegan, you might go years and years and years and years without a B12 deficiency based on the stores that you have in your body. It's a funny one because we don't use that much each day. Even though it is a water-soluble vitamin, you would think that like other water-soluble vitamins, it's in the kidneys if you have too much and it's flushed out. But it seems not to be the case. People generally, when they have bolus doses of B12, notice the positive side effects. If there's negative ones, they probably notice them as well, but it's like, it's a vitamin that we need, so there's probably not that many negative ones. Mm-hmm. But they notice them, and it's almost like creatine, where they can build up on it for a while, get those positive side effects, and then the side effects start to dwindle, which means that B12 stores are pretty full, and then they can either stop or reduce supplementation. I tend to do it for someone who's just going on to B12 supplementation. If they've been vegan for a while, I tend to do it with like a loading protocol, kind of like what you do with creatine, where you have like a initial period, and it's dependent on the person, and it's different lengths and different dosages, but pretty much following the recommendations in the science are on a package. So most people won't do more than like I think it's like 2,000 international units a day or something like that. But yeah, following those guidelines, and then tapering off once the positive side effects start to not diminish, but not get any better.
Yeah. And you kind of cycle through that.
Well, I kind of like, once these people are on it, I try and get them to keep taking it forever. But if they stop taking it for whatever reason, then I would do the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's a vitamin. It's not like most supplements where you can build up a tolerance to it. The reason this positive side effects kind of dwindle off is just because your stores are full. Yeah, it's not like they go away. You just almost get used to them. But yeah, B12 is your big one. It's your most essential one. It's the one that there's pretty much no way of getting. And in fact, even in an omnivorous diet, the only reason you're getting it is because the animal that you're eating was supplemented with B12. It's a bacteria that's found in dirt. Due to over farming, it's pretty much no longer found in dirt anymore. So even if you eat only free range, unmedicated, whatever animal it is, you're probably going to end up with a B12 deficiency anyway. But again, these things happen over really long periods of time.
Yeah.
And the longer in your life you've been eating animal products, probably the higher B12 store you have. And it's actually why I want to tread carefully here, but when you see the stories about the parents who have their kid on a vegan diet and then the kid dies or almost dies, I believe it was even in Australia that something like that happened, or similar to that happened fairly recently. That's usually because of they don't have this store of B12 or whatever other micronutrients they're lacking. Like an adult would if they went in after 20 years, they decided they were going vegan. So to apply the same logic you apply to an adult making this decision to a child, or especially to an infant, is very, very short-sighted. And it generally comes down, as this whole podcast probably will, to being educated around your nutrition.
Yeah, with best intentions, I'm sure, though. Of course.
Yeah.
Nobody's like, my kid is not eating animal products because I have bad intentions.
Yeah, of course. I think there's a great point there in the fact that you aren't going to stop eating meat and 1 week later you have a deficiency, because we see people switch off from meat products and just make more health conscious choices generally. So they might stop eating meat, but there's other variables alongside that. There's other health seeking behaviors, like they're probably just eating more fiber. They're probably getting more micronutrients, vitamins and minerals from the increased fruit and vegetables that they're eating. They're probably having a lower calorie density diet, so they've lost some body weight. And so there's all these things that are positive for health. And they're the reasons why they're feeling better, not because meat is no longer existing in their diet. So there's some correlations between, feeling good and looking good and removing meat that wasn't causative of keeping meat in their diet. So they may think, this is so much better for me. I look better. I feel better. My weight is down. I don't need to supplement anything because, look, I'm healthier. But really, it's the long-term consequences that we're looking at here and we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, the body of evidence in regards to comparing a vegan diet to an omnivorous diet and then health implications generally are missing the forest for the trees, in that they're comparing typical westernized diets that are heavily processed, largely happening in a lot of Americanized, also
full of trans-saturated fats.
Yeah, terrible foods, processed foods. They switch over and they're good, but what we know also when we look at dietary recall studies is that vegans are generally far more health aware and health conscious. So you make better decisions. You do reduce calories typically. You have a better understanding of what's going on there.
More active and non-smokers.
Yeah, exactly. You make better decisions in general.
Yeah. So it's the overall health-seeking behaviors that coincide with plant-based diets.
Yes.
And it's not fair to compare them to a meat eater who's sedentary and overweight and smokes and drinks.
Yeah, not the absence of meat, but rather the presence of vegetables and good behaviors.
Yeah, to use the example that comes directly from the study, if you only study people who walked into a health food shop, then whether they were vegan or not vegan, they probably have very similar health-seeking behaviors and therefore very similar basal levels of health.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. So I think that's a common misconception, isn't it?
Yeah. So we got B12. Anecdotally, Nick, have you seen any difference between do you do B12 injections versus oral tablets?
I don't. I use oral. Germany's actually really easy to get B12 injections, but my B12 was already high, and I've maintained it because when I made the decision to stop eating animal products, I went into it with my eyes wide open, and I made all the right decisions from the start. So I've had no, apart from collagen, which I never actually saw would be an issue. Outside of that, everything's been fine, and I've had no, detrimental health issues. But purely just because I was educated enough when I started, probably due to the fact that I work in the industry. But yeah, as far as anecdotally from the people who I know who do get the injections, essentially they get those side effects, those positive side effects really quickly. And so they feel like the injection works. Berlin's a weird place. They have vitamin bars where people go and they get IV vitamins. most people probably use it after a hangover, but people are like, oh, I'm getting sick, I'm going to the IV vitamin bar. And I'm like, oh my God. But then, so when people do get the B12 injection, they generally notice a positive side effect initially. And because they have so much of that time, and because it isn't like the other water soluble vitamins where it's flushed out when you have that overconsumption, it trails off after a while, and then they get the injection again. Whereas I take the tablets, so I have a fairly steady stream. Okay. I also can't, obviously, not being a doctor, I can't prescribe the injections. So when I'm taking people through their, plant-based nutrition, I tend to talk about the tablet and not really the injection, because it's just a whole bunch of other steps. And like in the UK, for example, it is a massive fuck around trying to get the injection compared to just getting tablets.
Yeah, it's not as accessible for the client.
That's a weird one in Australia. You can just walk into a chemist and buy a B12 kit yourself.
Well, tell you what, Nick, funny story. I was really hungover one morning after a wedding. Hi, Matt and Olympia. It was your wedding that I'm talking about. And, sometimes you're hungover and then you're that hungover, you're actually dying. So I was actually dying, and I don't like needles at all. Like, I've copped them sweet before, like biting down on my thumb and like squeezing my eye shut. I hate them. Hate them. And Dean's like, I know what would make you feel better, a vitamin B shot from the chemist. So
massive oversight on my behalf.
He goes to the chemist, comes home. Think of this, like a horror movie, there's someone coming towards you with this giant needle and like squirting liquid in the air as they're coming towards you. And you're like, ah! That's what it wasn't really like that, but that's what it felt like in my head. And so Dean comes up. I
imagine he was wearing a nurse's outfit.
Yes.
Yeah, he was.
So yeah, I think it was actually like me and the guy who stayed at our house.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah, hey, Chris. We were like just walking to go get coffee, and I was like, a B12 shot, that'd be a smart idea. I'm thinking, instantaneous energy, not forgetting the fact that it doesn't kick in bugging that day anyway. It's really 2-3 days later. So then I'm like, Liz, I've got this idea, and the pack came in 3. So we're like, yeah, one in, all in,
one each.
And then, yeah.
So anyways, Dean goes to put this thing in my arm, and as soon as like the tip nearly touches my skin, I'm like, don't you dare, I'll do it. And so I spend like 10 minutes like putting it up to my shoulder, taking it away, putting it up to my, and then, I think we ended up doing it, didn't we?
She butchered her shoulder.
I've never injected myself before.
No.
I don't know what I'm doing.
But like out of sheer fear, like if anyone's playing at home, I've got a pen, like, if you wanted to push it in fast to break the skin, she pushed it in as slow as you possibly could.
And on an angle, apparently.
The skin folded in on itself. It didn't break. And then she's screaming the whole time. And then eventually it gets in, and she was basically just like jackhammering herself with this little needle. And
look, it wasn't a good time.
It wasn't.
And I didn't feel any better after.
No.
So screw you, Dean.
So B12 hangovers does what?
Thanks for the suggestion.
Generally, I think when they do these IV vitamin injection, well, it's not an injection, it's IV, but when they do the vitamins intravenously, it comes with a shitload of water, so that's probably the only thing that actually makes them feel any better.
A bit more hydrated.
They'll be loaded up, saline and water. All right, so we've got B12. Anything else worth considering from a supplemental point of view for anyone who's into the vegan or plant-based diet?
Iron is a big one, especially in women, because they recycle iron way more than men, obviously, because period is, a large amount of iron. And then you've got vitamin D if you live, well, it's the same for everyone, but nutritionally you can get vitamin D from certain foods. Those foods aren't generally available. In fact, I don't think they're available at all to vegans. So
mushrooms?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of vitamin D in there. But generally it's like dairy and because it's a fat soluble vitamin, it's in higher fat foods, and that's usually generally meat and dairy. So to get enough, if you're living
dosage specific, right?
Yeah, and it's also fortified as well into those foods, not even that naturally occurring. So
I guess saying I eat mushrooms, therefore I'm eating vitamin D is like saying I ate an almond, therefore I ate enough protein today. Like we have to look at the dosage.
Yes.
So vitamin D is a big one, especially if you live anywhere further than 30 degrees from the equator is the official recommendation. And how much you take is based on how much sunlight you're getting. Basically, we're all just giant plants, and we all need sunlight, food, and water.
We're photosynthesizing.
Yeah.
That's funny.
For vegans, you can get a algae-based one, or it is algae, but it's not algae-based. It comes from algae. And yeah, that's algae. Is it alive? Is it not alive? It's probably more alive than plants. It's a funny one. But anyway, that's where most people get it from. And then after vitamin D, you've got omegas. I think I've done that the wrong way around. Maybe algae is the one you get omegas from. Anyway, omegas are important as well. You can get them from nuts, but generally to get enough of omega-3 from whole food sources that aren't animal-based, you're probably getting a crap ton of calories around that as well. So if you're calorie conscious, I would look at an omega-3 supplement as well. And then, that's definitely the one that comes from algae, because algae lives with fish and fish have omega-3s. That's how I try and remember it.
I actually had to get not source personally, but I found an algae for a friend of mine who didn't do fish. So algae for omegas for sure.
Yeah. So vitamin D, I can't remember where that comes from. But there is a vegan source of it. Usually I think the vegan source is generally vitamin D2. But if you can find the D3, it's more bioavailable, and therefore you don't have to take as much.
Talk us through some, sorry, cut you off.
Go nuts.
Oh, I was going to say, talk us through some vegan-friendly protein powders. Obviously not whey. There would be, pea
protein, hemp protein, brown rice protein.
Pea, hemp, rice, and soy are your most common ones. Soy is a complete protein. It tends to be the most bioavailable. It also isn't as grainy, but what's the way I would describe soy protein? It's kind of like very, very floury. Like kind of like if you don't shake it up, you're definitely going to get like the viscous layer around the outside of a big clump of powder. Like it's very, very viscous is probably another good way to put it. Is that soy?
That one's a pea and brown, I believe.
I just, for people who are just listening, we're recording this as a video call, and I just put my shaker up to Nick to the camera because I just drank a rice and pea blend. And I don't know if I'm just really crap at shaking protein shakes, but whenever I shake that vegan one that I drink, no matter how much I shake it, there's always these little clumps of powder. It's fine.
So when I am drinking a lot of protein powder, I've got this shaker that has, it's not a blender, but it's like a little battery-powered whisk thing. And that tends to do a better job of it because I can just leave it on for ages and I don't have to, my right hand from being a teenager is pretty good at shaking shakers, but my left hand not so much. So I use this battery-powered whiz thing. And it does an all right job. But pea and rice protein, you can get them separately. Generally, I recommend getting them together, and that's because without going too far into it, the amino acids that are lacking in one of them tend to be not lacking in the other, and then vice versa. So when you put them together, you get a complete, or very, well, technically it's complete amino acid profile, and therefore is better for all the things we want to use it for.
Cool. Could you define what complete protein is for our listeners?
Yeah, so complete protein is including all the essential amino acids in sufficient amounts. And that's insufficient amounts is the part that people get caught up on a lot, because technically things like almonds have all the essential amino acids. They just don't have them all in sufficient amounts. And it's relative to the others. So they can be super high in one or super low in one, and it throws them off and they're no longer considered complete. And like the wheat example we were talking about before, because wheat is pretty much fine except for having really low leucine. Once you pump the leucine up, you then had way too much of the other proteins. So by searching for a complete vegan, well, a complete protein, whether it's vegan or not, you're getting essentially more available protein for the calories, because you can make that up, as I did with the wheat example. Yeah, if you're calorie conscious, you want to try and aim for more complete sources. So the other one we said was hemp, which technically is, is it complete? I think like it's one of those ones that are borderline complete. But again, usually hemp protein powder is only about has about half as much protein as normal protein powder. So if you went like whey compared to hemp, whey can be like 90% protein depending on the one you get, and where hemp's like 50% protein. So you're getting 50% of your shake is usually carbs. There's a little bit of fat in hemp as well because it comes from seeds. But yeah, they're your big ones. And yeah, they all have pluses and minuses. I tend to stick to either soy. If it's around a workout, you might have a little bit more benefit from going with the soy protein. It also comes with less overall calories. But then, like when you're getting to the point where you're trying to cut down and you are drinking a lot more protein shakes, I try and get away from soy. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but I'm already consuming it in other parts of my day. And I don't want all my protein to come from soy. They've done plenty of research on soy and found that in normal amounts that there's no negative effect on men or women. But that's in normal amounts. And I assume getting like 250 grams of protein that all comes from soy is probably not in normal amounts.
No,
I don't want to be the guy. I don't want to be the test subject that finds out that it does make you grow boobs, if you know what I mean.
You actually did a wicked post on soy. Was it a few months ago, maybe? And you gave some awesome further reading links as references at the end. So maybe we'll send a link in our show notes to that that post that you did, Nick, if anyone wants to read about soy a bit more, if they're not yet convinced that it's a safe product.
Yeah, like I said, there's heaps of research on it. The caveat is always that they say in normal amounts. And yeah, what is a normal amount is kind of the next question. But I've seen up to I think it was 1.6 grams of protein coming all from soy per kilo. So that is the normal amount. And then because for me I tend to go over, I just don't get all from soy. But yeah, they're your big shake options.
Liquid protein.
So you just mentioned normal being 1.6 grams per kilo of body weight. So just for listeners, I'm 60 kilos on the scales. That would mean that I'm getting 96 grams of protein out of my 120 a day from soy products. So that's like a lot. That's a huge percentage.
Yeah, you'd have to consciously do that.
Yeah, you'd have to really.
That's just the top end as well. Yeah, like they do. It's not like you have to have 96 grams a day, or from soy. That's just the top end that I've seen research on.
Yeah, I'd have a hard time getting 96 grams of protein from any one single source.
Yeah. You would have to consciously do that.
When we look at, what I've always found interesting is when we look at like in moderation or in moderate amounts, when you look under the hood and figure out what's really meant by that, it's always higher than I predict.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you always have a hard time eating more than a modest or balanced amount.
And then even those are half the time are also even severely reduced below the legitimate number.
Yeah, that's true.
Like when you look at the what's it called, the AD50? I can never remember. It's a lethal dose. The lethal dose for sweeteners, and it's like that amount is like whatever they say is the amount. You can times that essentially by like another 50, and that's kind of when they start to see problems. So like, there's just no chance in hell you're going to get.
And it was something like 26 cans a day.
Yeah, depending on the sweetener, and then that's still 50 times less than necessary to actually see.
Yeah, and it was 20 cans at the same time. It wasn't at a day either. Like if you would have to just pound them one after the other to
you'd have to
get
be
to
double
that dosage.
Yeah.
You have to be on a 7-Eleven, bring your own bucket for $1 a day.
Be sensible, people.
Yeah.
Any other stuff?
I think so then it comes down, like after that, you can pretty much cover everything with your nutrition. So eating enough, vegetables pretty much will cover things like calcium and that. If you are finding that you're trying to cover it with your nutrition, as with any deficiency, if you're trying to cover it with your nutrition, it's not working, then turn to supplementation. But calcium is another common one, and one that you can't actually supplement for as a vegan as of yet, and my pet peeve, and probably the only thing that would have me considering a different way of eating is collagen, because of what it is. It only comes from animals. There's no other form that I'm aware of. Like people say collagen, oh, what about gelatin? It's essentially the same thing. it's just processed a little bit differently, but it does the same thing in the body. And yeah, as far as I'm aware, like someone's listening to this podcast and they have a vegan-friendly form of collagen, go into the show notes and contact Flex or contact me because I need to know what it is. But as far as I'm aware, there's nothing. If I ever go into research, which is what I want to do in my career, that is where I'm going to be, setting my sights. Because if they can lab grow meat, they can lab grow collagen. And once they've got that sorted, like technically, if you're like a super vegan, and you even care about that one initial animal, probably a cow in this case, who had a biopsy of, one of their joints or their skin or whatever they get it from in the end, and then all the rest was grown from that, then yeah, it probably still wouldn't be vegan friendly. But in my scenario, I would totally eat lab grown, probably meat, but I would definitely consume lab grown collagen.
I look forward to that day that they can make lab-grown meat, and I would switch. I would pay double. I'd pay more than double. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it's becoming more insects, Liz?
Insects. I have no ethical qualms over and above a chicken, but I don't know if I could bring myself to doing it. I think I'd rather be super deficient in everything before I ate an insect.
Yeah. Sorry, go on, dude.
I said, what would be the difference to eating an insect over another animal?
Well, ethically none, but they're just gross.
You know the RSPCA, or maybe it's a PETA sign, where it's got like the big lineup of animals, and it says, "Where do you draw the line?" Different people will draw the line in different places. Like the big joke was that everyone drew the line after horse, but even vegans, like you could continue that on forever, all the way down to
an ant,
a bacteria, even.
Right.
Like technically there'd be some sort of level of life, and it's where do you draw the line on sentience is usually the big one. And a lot of vegans would draw the line at insects. A lot of non-vegans who are considering it would probably draw the line there as well.
Well, we recently got our house sprayed for pest control and heaps of cockroaches died, and I'm okay with that. But logically I shouldn't be, but I am.
I've eaten termites.
Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll give you one. It tasted like
chicken. It tastes like chicken?
No.
They didn't taste like chicken.
No.
Termites.
What do they taste like?
Termites.
Wood.
Oh.
I just felt like I was chewing on wood chips, literally. And they're so small. So like I was at a camp where they were showing us like some Aboriginal culture and whatnot. And they're like, yeah, this tree here. And you just would tap them with your finger and then just put them in your mouth. And they're so small. Like
Didn't
there's
they
nothing
try
of
and
them.
Bite you?
No, they're like so tiny. Like, and yeah, it was just literally like wood chips were in my mouth. I was like, well, this is interesting.
Wonderful.
Ew, you made it.
There's wood chips crawling around your mouth. Yeah.
You would have eaten its poo if it had full bowels.
Yeah.
You probably ate termite wee.
Yeah.
Termite dick. You ate a termite's dick.
I did.
Dean likes dick. Tell everyone.
Yep, that's me, guys.
This is like that South Park episode. Do you like fish sticks?
I need to familiarize myself with more South Park. It's been a while since I've watched them.
I had thought of another one. What about creatine?
Yeah, but that's not specifically vegan. I'd recommend that for everyone. I would, like, if my grandparents were still alive, I'd buy them creatine every Christmas. Like, it's probably the one thing that, like, the only side effect I've ever heard of in any research is some digestive discomfort, which can be mitigated by spreading your dose over a longer period of time or having more water with it. Like, if you're one of those people who just pours the creatine scoop in their mouth and then just has a swig of water, then you might get some discomfort. But if you're, putting it in a liter, you're probably not going to. I think that is universal. If there's one thing they should add to the water, it's probably creatine. Fuck fluoride.
That'd be sick.
Yeah, let's protest for that.
And metformin.
You want to start a petition?
Yeah, metformin, that would be a good one.
I'm down.
You want to cure, the obesity epidemic? Start putting metformin in the water. Don't tell anyone though, because
metformin and creatine. We just have a
jacked lean.
Everyone will just be lean and jacked. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the water.
It was like the isn't the Marines, one of them, where they pretty much unofficially, what do I have to say? I have to say allegedly prescribe performance enhancing drugs to, a lot of their, not all their members, but like the frontline people, so that they look like they have the most imposing force, and then they perform like that as well. So allegedly, in case there's anyone from those forces listening, I also don't give out my address. But yeah, it's the same sort of thing behind that. Like if you want to have a better performing or a better functioning or a better looking population, however big that is, in this case it's the military, then they give them the stuff that makes them do that. So you could do that on a wider scale with things like metformin and creatine.
Yeah. We just recorded a podcast with the evil genius himself, and it was like an hour of carbohydrate and performance enhancing drug talk.
Yeah, it was good.
He would definitely probably, okay, yeah. If that's a true thing, like that's just a thing that I had been told by a bunch of people in the Marines, allegedly. But if it's still going on, he's the guy who would know.
Yeah,
he probably would.
Yeah, he would know.
Absolutely. He also has lots of stories about Jamaican Athletics Association.
Yeah,
we haven't delved into that one yet.
Yeah,
but I
love his stories.
Yeah,
my favorite one. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say I used to have a guy in when I used to work for Nutrition Warehouse in Brisbane who was friends with one of the police officers here on the Gold Coast, and they have like a beat group that are basically like the muscled up version of that too, to try and essentially enforce and intimidate individuals around Gold Coast nightlife. And they were paid in the middle of the day to train. That was part of their hours that they were allowed to go and train together. They all trained collectively, and it was just kind of like an unspoken thing that you want to use those things. Like, you're the guys that we need to look like that. So it seems like they got paid a bunch too. You said it was the best cop job you could get. Yeah. They're just out there.
It's not just that they, get paid for it and it, helps them look imposing. It's also so that if they do have to act, they actually do possess the, enhanced abilities to do whatever it is they're trying to do. They're going to be stronger than someone who's probably bigger than them.
I doubt they're going to be able to run very far, but they'd be strong.
Well, they weren't monsters.
Well, you never know. They use performance enhancing drugs in running sports as well. Like, because maybe they have different like squads. Like, you're the squad who beats people up, and you're the squad who chases people.
You guys take clenbuterol, and you guys take Deca.
You're in the Ben Johnson camp, and you're in the Arnold camp.
Yeah.
That's so great. All right. So do we want to summarize today's discussion, unless you've got any other points that you think would be practical for plant-based eaters to take home?
Well, I do just want to mention that the supplements that I've recommended, the reason I haven't given dosages for most of them is because they're all going to be fairly dependent on situation, person, and deficiency. So, vitamin B12 might have a, certain dosage that you need if you're deficient compared to if you're not deficient. So, generally, I recommend with all supplementing, especially when it comes to vitamins, minerals, is consult your doctor, MD, physician, whatever you call them, wherever you live. And outside of that, if it's things like creatine, just take 5 grams a day. That's one thing I do give a blanket on. And then again, anything else, it's a supplement. It's there to supplement your diet. So if you're taking protein powder, use it to get your protein up to a sufficient level. Like, that's all there is to it. You don't need an exact number.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, that's awesome. And that is how vegans can be less shit.
True. And likely do more shits by being vegan.
Do more shits.
Lots of fibrous data.
Yeah, if you're doing it right, you're doing more shits. Way more farts as well, which I think is hilarious. My girlfriend does not.
I bet she doesn't.
Well, it depends what kind of farts they are. if they're just noisy and just awkwardly annoying, probably not that bad.
No, I'm gonna say that all farts are either like quite repellent or just annoying, even if they're loud and not smelly. So
what if they're like comically loud pitched and the duration is like impressive?
Yeah, if they don't come out of a bum, it's funny because I actually play this game with Dean all the time. I blow a fart on his neck and I say, like, would you rather be on a first date and do a fart like this, and then I'll like do the fart, or like this? So I think farts are really funny, but not when they come out of bums.
Yeah, I think it's the association of where it's exited.
Yeah, sorry, Nick.
No, I'm a big fan of farts. I think they're hilarious.
Do you want to play this game now?
No, let's not play this game now. It's not good for the viewers.
It'll be real quick.
No,
I do want to play the game. I want to play the game.
Come on, Dean. All right. So would you rather do a fart like this? Or
Definitely number one.
Oh, you're a number one guy.
Yeah, number two sounded like it wasn't just a fart.
Sometimes they come out squeaky. You never know.
Number two is the moment where you've run just to make it, and that's the initial, and then the rest of it arrives thereafter.
Yeah, the rest didn't have any sound.
How good is that game?
It's a good game.
I'm a big fan. I'll just do it with actual farts when I play it. Like this or like this.
My brother Matt, not to name him.
I think you just did.
Oh, whoops. We used to work for this company, and he would hold them all day long. And he can't burp. He's a very weird individual. So when he tries to burp, he literally just kind of opens his mouth and goes up. Like nothing comes out. Right? But man, could he fart. And he used to just come home and be like, cool, I've been at work for 8 hours. I've been on the bus for 45 minutes. I've got everything just...
Does he not have a toilet
on hold in the chamber? And he would come home as a young dude and just like, we would just be in stitches because he would just hang on to those things and they would last for 30 seconds.
Wow.
Impressive human.
That's gross.
Oh, I'm a big fan. I think if, I don't know what's worse, not being able to burp or burping and then wondering, was that just a fart that worked its way up? Has that been sitting in my colon?
It sucked too because he'd be bloated and you'd hear him and he'd be like, and he'd be like, ah, like he'd never get the relief. I'm like, what the hell, man?
That's really weird.
It's got a broken fundus.
Moving on, Nick, have you read or listened to or watched something worth sharing with our audience today?
I'm never prepared for these. So most of what I'm reading at the moment is coming from this book, which is Sports Nutrition Volume 3.
You can drop.
Yeah, which is super interesting, but I'm reading it for the purposes of studying, which means that all my other consumption of media is generally not to educate myself because I'm doing so much of that already. So if you like fantasy books, I could probably give you some audiobooks to listen to. But I've just recently re-listened to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I'm working my way through those again. Or depends on how big of a nerd you are. I really like listening to people play Dungeons and Dragons on podcasts, which if you're not a nerd, you won't understand why that's entertaining.
It must not be.
Essentially, it's like collective storytelling where a lot of the decisions are made by the roll of a dice. So it can be quite humorous or dramatic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's all for my non-learning brain, all that stuff at the moment.
That's important to have a mix, isn't it?
Yeah, I need to learn that.
Why?
When I write the show notes, I'll put something in there.
No. I just pigeonhole. I'm like, what else can I do? I don't do any of the extra stuff other than veg out at the TV. I do that. Like
he does binge.
When I'm done, I'm just like, I just need to watch something stupid, so I don't have to think.
Yeah. So generally, once I'm done, editing this podcast, I'm probably going to have to go on to doing some study. So I tend to like having something I can listen to works better with that because I can do it at the same time as I'm doing something else.
Totally. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question, which is, if you had to die tomorrow, how would you do it and why would you choose that method?
I assume I'm doing it to myself then, if it's how would I do it.
Yes.
Well, you don't have to slit your wrist. You could have something fall on you or something.
So I actually liked Alan's answer, which, this will come out after his one. So where he talked about he wanted to do
jump off a building.
Yeah, not just jump off. He wanted to bomb dive off a building, which I thought was pretty good.
No,
I thought that was so morbid. It mortified me.
Why would you want to do that? I
just think it's funny. Imagine, it would just the whole way down until he hit. It would look like he was gonna, you would expect the ground to splash up around him, and then it just wouldn't.
Sure, he could have actually once the best time.
Yeah, he could be wahooing, and I actually once saw a video. It's just the bottom of it. Obviously, we're not going to show this, but it's just a street level camera, and it's just footpaths, and then there's these bollards that keep people from walking on the road, and just out of nowhere, you just see this body just go, onto the bollard. So someone had jumped off a building and landed on the bollard straight up them. Apparently they survived and were then taken to the hospital. They cut the bollard off, taken to the hospital with the bollard in them still, and then died in the hospital.
Fuck.
So if you know that person, sorry. But
I don't, and that's
you don't.
horrifying.
Is that how you're going up?
No, the way I don't want to go out is definitely not massive bollard in the anus. I think I'd want to do something like really dramatic, like find some cause that I really care about and find a way to go out in style supporting that cause.
You know what? I dig that. That's so cool. That's a cool way to die for sure, because that's like guaranteed media attention for that cause.
I reckon it would be assuming that you can talk to animals and they give you permission.
Go on, Dean. Because this is reality.
Riding an emu, shooting down game hunting humans.
Yes, that would be sick.
But you get caught in the crossfire, unfortunately. Obviously, you die. But
yeah, so something like that would be awesome. Like if I was going to die tomorrow and I did it saving like a lion or something awesome, or even like to bring it back to Australia at the moment, like running into the bushfire, finding a koala and then bringing it out. And then as I bring it out, it like crawls away and I just die in a crispy corpse. That'd work.
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I dig that. That's a good way of dying.
Good death story. All right, number 2 is, what is something people don't know about you? Although we kind of shared that at the start. Anything else?
We did kind of share at the start. Not many people know that I play Dungeons and Dragons, so we've probably already gone over that as well. Like,
Okay.
I'm actually a massive nerd. Like, I do all the nerd stuff.
I accept Dungeons and Dragons, and now I will choose a card at random
For shitty choices.
from our trusty shitty choices. So, Dean, you're supposed to hold it up to the camera when you did that.
This is shitty choices so that we can prove that we aren't stitching you up.
I did just pick one out at random, but Dean didn't have the thing up to the camera.
You going to stick with it?
Would you
we've already
rather...
asked that one on the podcast, unfortunately.
Oh, have we, Dean?
Yep.
All right. Would you rather fight 200 third graders or a bear with sharks for arms?
What?
A bear with sharks for arms.
That's such a random question.
You wouldn't have very long to fight the bear because the shark needs water to breathe. So you've got to be real quick.
So the sharks need water to breathe, but also I imagine the sharks, like imagine 6 foot arms. All you have to do is get within 6 feet, but not close enough that it can bite you, and you're pretty safe. Like, yeah.
But
Until
also,
the sharks die.
if it was provided with permission, wouldn't it be fun to beat the shit out of 200 third graders?
Yeah, I don't know. It would. I guess it would be one of those things where it feels too easy.
200 of them would. I reckon.
I don't know. Have you
easy.
seen Step Brothers, man? Those kids are pretty brutal. They beat up on those 2 Step Brothers.
They'd go straight for the nut.
What's third grade? 10 years old.
Yeah,
So,
9 or 10.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably start with a cup, and then I reckon it'd be pretty easy. Like you'd get to the point, I reckon, where you're just like smashing their skulls together, and they all just like.
6 foot. I'm about a 9-year-old's height, so it's not really.
I'd grab one by the feet and use him as a baseball bat.
Yeah, just swing him around and hit all the other ones. Yeah.
I think we've lost all of our listeners that are parents. On that note, we'll wrap up. Thanks for joining us again today, Nick.
Yes, and
Thanks
if
for having
anyone
me.
wants to mind their kids, you know where to find us.
That's so great. All right, until next time.
Thanks, Nick.
See ya.